All right, it's 12:45. It's time to get started. I don't know about you, but one of my first exposures to Disney music was the old Mickey Mouse Club. And I'm talking about that black and white version with Karen and Cubby and Annette and everybody that goes with it. So a proper way to start off this would be... Wait. And there's our Mickey Mouse Club march that kicked off the beginning of every episode of the Mickey Mouse Club show. What a great show. And the one they brought out in the 70s wasn't as good, so I really love watching the old version. And so let's start things off with the Mickey Mouse Club march. Go ahead and get out that music. This has got some nice technique stuff in there. And so we've got 2 pages here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to share the screen. And we're going to walk through the piece and take a look at some things to get an idea of what to expect before we plow into it. So I'm going to click Share Screen, go to AirPlay, Share Computer Sound, and then I'm going to go diagonally across the iPad, hit Screen Mirroring. And that's going to go ahead and bring up the first page right here, and I'll make some annotations here as we go along. So it's a standard practice. I make my own arrangements these days, but if I ever do learn a piece of music from somebody else's tablature, there's a certain process I like to go through to make sure that I have a good idea about what I should be doing as I play through it the first time. We get really excited and we want to jump into a piece right away. But that forces us to make split-second decisions if we come across a chord configuration or a melody line that's going in a different direction than we're used to. We have to make those decisions, and we don't always make the right decisions right off the bat. And whatever flubs we make, unfortunately, muscle memory has recorded. So then we have to kind of get away from that flub and put the right information in. So instead of sight reading it cold, I like to go in and examine things to see how I'm going to approach playing, and this goes for any piece of tablature. So what we've got here, the Mickey Mouse Club March. Let me go ahead and flatten this out. Okay, so the first thing is we are in DAD tuning, and then we're going to take a look at our very beginning here, which is going to be our key signature and our time signature. We have 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp, so we're in the key of D. And then we've got 4/4 time. Top number is how many beats are in the measure, and the bottom number is what gets the beat, or the note duration that we're going to use as a ruler for the rest of the tune. So it's 4 beats per measure, and 4 stands for the quarter note, and the quarter note is what's going to get the beat. The next step is to take a look at the navigation. And as you can tell right off the bat, we've got 2 dots right there at the very beginning in the first measure. And so that means we have a repeat section going on here. It's going to start from the first measure right there. And then we're going to go into the 4th measure, and there is our repeat symbols at the end of the measure. So everything in between those 2 symbols, we're going to repeat. And this does involve a first ending, which is just a gate you can only enter 1 time every single time you go through the piece. So we'll go from measure 1, we'll go to the end of measure 4, then we'll go back to measure 1, and we'll play through measure 1, measure 2, measure 3, But we won't go back into the first ending because we've already gone there. That gate is now locked. So now we'll move on to the second ending at measure 5 and continue forward. So very basic, let me do this real quick. Erase, erase, erase. Very basic opening there. And then we have our second page. And we don't have any other navigation going on there, so we just have, we're going through the verse twice, basically. And then Mickey Mouse is what follows as we lead from the second ending on to the end. So with navigation and all the other stuff out of the way, the very next step is to take a look at the chords and the melody and figure out how we want to use our chord grips. Do we want to use the same old fingers that we normally use? Or are things a little bit different in this arrangement where you might have to make some alternative choices, not for the whole song, but maybe just for a measure? Maybe you normally would finger, you know, a 101 chord with your index finger and your thumb, but because of the way it's situated, you know, in, say for example, in measure 4, with a 2 that follows right after the 101 chord on the middle string, well, now you don't have a finger to put on there if you're using your index finger and your thumb. So you might want to use your index finger and your ring finger instead, which frees the thumb up to hit the 2. It's decisions like that. You don't have to change the way you do things for the entire song, but you might have to alter how you do things for a measure or two if you run across a combination that you're not used to. What we want to do is we want to look at every measure and figure out what the chords are and how far we have to move in order to get the melody. We want to keep those notes sustaining as long as possible for lots and lots of full sounding support. And just kind of be aware of the fact that if you keep your fingers on the same strings, you won't have to take your fingers off of them in the middle of phrases. And that means it's going to be a lot easier for you to keep that music flowing as opposed to getting kind of chopped up. Another thing, though, I want you to be very aware of is, and I'll give you a little secret here about chord melody style playing, you'll notice in a couple of different locations that we've got melody that is happening on the middle string. And you can usually tell that if there's something on the bass, if there's something on the bass string, if there's something on the middle string, but there's nothing on the melody string. That means that the melody has now shifted to the middle string. The secret to chord melody style playing is to make sure that your melody note is the highest pitched note in the chord. So typically we are playing chords and the highest pitched note is on the melody string. Very easy for us to do these 3-note chords. But sometimes it's necessary, because of the mountain dulcimer's range, to do lower notes and then come across to the middle string. In those instances, you want to make sure that you only strum as far as that middle string and don't play your melody string. Because if we do play the melody string, we'll actually have something a little bit higher than where the melody is actually living, and that can possibly bury the melody. And what we, of course, want that melody to do is pop and stand out from the rest of the arrangement. And so I'll show you some ways of doing that that hopefully won't be too complicated, and you'll be able to use these techniques when you encounter other pieces of music where the melody does float around on the middle string and sometimes even on the bass string by itself. If you do have melody for some reason that goes to the bass string, then you want to make sure you simply play only the bass string and nothing on the middle and nothing on the melody. I know that sounds really strange, but dynamically it's okay every once in a while for the mountain dulcimer to not have anything else going on except for one note at a time. And depending on the tune, you know, it's either something that sticks out a lot, like with a ballad, or it's something that you may not notice very much because it's more of a raucous type of song like this one. And then that's it, really. So take a moment, if you haven't done so already, and kind of look through the piece, get your fingers on some of those chords. And then what I'll do right now is I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to go through and walk through the whole piece and play it, and also get another view up here on the dulcimer so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go to Minicam, and I'm going to choose now the overhead. And make sure I'm aligned so that you can see what's going on here. Okay. Let's start from the very beginning. And also real quick, I'm going to do my markup and erase all of this stuff there. Okay, first of all, from the very beginning, we've got these nice stacks of chords showing us where the rhythm emphasis is. And they're pretty much on the first and third beats. 1 da 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 da. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. Emphasis on 1 and 3 because this is a march, and marches have emphasis on 1 and 3. Most other songs that are kind of groovy and danceable have emphasis on 2 and 4, but the emphasis here is very much on the downbeat and also on beat 3. Here in measure second, the second measure, we're barring 1 for an E major. Then I'm going to lift up my ring finger to get that 0. Then I'm going to use my thumb, as I mentioned before, to capture the 2. Then I pick up my thumb and the 1 is already covered at the first fret. And the index finger is already on 1. So now I want to let go of everything else and just hit 1 and 0, because 0 is me, made for you and me. That's the melody right there. So we don't want to play open melody string because it'll bury the actual melody, which is on beats 3 and 4 of measure 2. So what I'm doing is I'm in-strumming on 1 and 0, coming towards me. It's a lot easier to do that and let your pick come to rest against the melody string and go no further than it is to try and go outwards. Strum out, skip the melody string, and then lower your pick and then get those 2 strings like that. A lot easier just to do that. And strum on that last A right there. Second line, they're G major. And now, real important here, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm using my thumb for the 2. Let me go open. And then normally I would play my 101 chords like this. Index finger on the bass string, thumb on the melody string. But that doesn't leave us any finger to work on that 2 on the middle string. So for this song, I split this way, index finger and ring finger. That leaves the thumb to come in and grab that. So that's one little alteration to how I normally play a 101 chord. And this is going to be the case for the rest of the tune because we do this a couple of times, and some other walk downs on that middle string. So you're going to split your 101 chord, index finger on the bass and ring finger on the melody string. These are just suggested grips for chords. You know, you can play them any way that makes you feel comfortable, but some of these are going to be suggestions that'll make things a little bit easier for you to keep that sustain going while you're playing melody. So I split those, come in with my thumb on 2, and then let go of everything for that final 0 0 0. And that's what is basically the A section. We'll repeat that whole thing, and then we'll take the second ending, do the same thing. But at the end of measure 5, there's going to be a couple of pickup notes, 8th notes, and that's going to be your Mickey, Mickey, and then measure 6 is mouse with the G major. Once again, notice we're only going as far as the middle string, because that melody is now on the middle string. Measure 6, hit that melody twice again, and now only as far as the middle string. Bass open, middle open. Now in this case, since we don't have anything to do on the melody string, we're going to be leading into a 101 chord from the final measure of the first page. So I go ahead and use my index finger and middle finger on the ones. Last two eighth notes, that thumb's going to come in, grab 2, 3, and then you can go ahead and pick up your middle finger off of that middle string, drop in your ring finger on the melody string, and that will give us our 101. And in measure 9, top of page 2, this frees up the thumb to do a cool little bass walk down. So if you just bring your thumb over and do 3, 2, and then pick up your thumb, you should already have your index finger on the 1, and that leads us back into Who's the Leader of the Club. From measure 6, let me go ahead and play. Well, let me take it from the second ending. 2, 3, 2, 3, and that's what's going on there in that last line of page 1, and then going into the first line of page 2. And then we repeat the verse, which we already did. Measure 12. And then our big finish, it's a half-time, half-speed finish. So instead of going, we're going. And then the big finish, and let me walk you through this slowly. It looks really crazy, but there's just a real easy way to do it. Starting from the last line starting from the last measure of line 2, we have our full G major, 3-1-0. Then we have a G6 chord that's 3-1-1. I use my pinky to come in on that 1. Keep all the other fingers where they're at. Measure 16. We're playing a G major 7. Going to go ahead and bring my thumb in to the second fret to get the 3-1-2. Then I'm moving my thumb up to play the 3-1-3. Then moving my thumb up to 4, and then moving my other fingers into position for the 2-3-4 D major chord. And then we can slide that whole configuration up to 4-5-7, and then the big ending right there. So I'm going to play through it again. I'm going to go slow and emphasize everything that I'm doing. And then I'm going to show you real quick a trick for those of you who have the 1.5 fret. And then we'll move on, because we've actually got 2 more songs, one super simple, and one's going to take the remainder of the workshop for sure. All right, so from the very beginning, repeat. Take the second ending. Two, 3. 2, 3. Walk it down. All right. Let me show you something for you 1.5 fret players. It's always nice to throw in a little D7 before you hit a G chord. There's something really nice about it. And on this tune in particular, if you just throw in the C at the 1.5 fret on the middle string, you can get a little momentary bit of D7 as you go down. Once again, you're going M-I-C. So on that third strum of the 0, 0, 0, come in on your 1.5 fret on the middle string, and that'll give you a little D7. And also, as you're playing it, you can add a lot of other stuff in, rhythms and so forth, especially if you remember it was always sung, you know, Donald Duck had to have his piece. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse. And so watch what I do on the bass string here. So you can throw in little rhythmic elements like that to just bring the piece to life. Take your memories of the tune and just try to make it come to life on the mountain dulcimer. You've got the notes, you've got the chords, you've got some of the technique and some of the tricks you can throw in there to smooth it out, and play it with gusto. If I had written this out with including all the different rhythms and stuff, it would have been a mess, and for you to try and separate all that stuff would have been crazy. So I wanted to give you the bare essentials, or the bare necessities, as the case may be, and now you can go along and you can add a bit more to it. If you play it sprightly, the melody is going to take care of a lot of the rhythmic action. Anything extra you can throw in there, of course, is going to help that whole thing sound really, really cool. Any questions on the Mickey Mouse Club March? All right, this is such a fun little tune. All right, speaking of fun little tunes, one of the other, there are a lot of shows that were part of the Mickey Mouse Club. I'm sure many of you remember Spin and Marty. You know, Annette had numerous adventures that showed up a lot. But one of the shows that were the most popular, especially in 1955, was the Adventures of Davy Crockett with Fess Parker. And so our next tune is the Ballad of Davy Crockett, written by George Bruns, who was a studio composer for Disney. And not only did George write a lot of the underscore for the dramatic films, the comedy films, and the animated films, but he also wrote some tunes that are very, very famous. And this is probably one of his most famous. It actually hit the Billboard charts in 1955 and was a real big hit for Walt Disney Records. It's only a one-pager. It uses some of the same techniques we used in the Mickey Mouse Club March. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on the screen now. Share screen, AirPlay, diagonal drag, screen mirroring, and I'm going to zoom this so that we get just the essentials. Get into my markup. Okay, so let's do the same thing that we did with the Mickey Mouse Club March. We'll do a little visualization here and kind of explore what we can expect. I do have DAD written down here in the tab. So we're in DAD tuning. We're once again in D. We've got two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. We're once again in 4/4 time. You may have noticed that we kind of swung the eighths on the Mickey Mouse Club March, gave it a bit of a bounce or a little shuffle feel. We're doing the exact same thing here. So instead of dum da 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 dum bum bum bum, it's more of a dum da 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 dum bum bum bum. Dotted 8 16th note combos basically, but again, writing that over and over again in tablature makes for messy tab. So I think a lot of people know the song has a bounce, and often you can just get away with writing play with a slight bounce or swing, and that'll do the trick. Okay, so we've got our primary stuff, and there's no navigation. We're playing it. It's one song, one page, split into chorus and verse. Verse is talking about the things that Davy's done, and of course, chorus is Davy, Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. So I just want to circle some things to be on the lookout here for. Once again, we've got some melody happening on the middle string. We don't have the same 101 followed by a 2 combination that we had with Mickey Mouse. So you might be able to go ahead and get away with your usual grip on the 101. There is some bouncing back and forth between the bar 1 and the 101. And then there's a little bit of melody happening, especially in measure 4 right there. Those kind of switcheroos can be a little tricky sometimes, so pay close attention there. Got a lot of writing the middle string for melody right before we get to the chorus. And of course, I'll walk us through that. So let me go ahead and play it for you. And then I'm going to show you how I shake things up. Because you know there's a lot of verses in this tune. The chorus remains the same, but the verses change. Starts off very simply, and then if you listen to all the verses, it ends up with Davy going to Washington. You know, it starts off, born on a mountaintop in Tennessee. Green estate in the land of the free, raised in the woods so's he knew every tree, killed him a bar when he was only 3. And then it ends up with when he come home his politicking was done, but the western march had just begun, so he packed his gear and his trusty gun and lit off a grinnin' to follow the sun. So there's a lot of different syllable combinations and word combinations, and so even though this is only a one-page tab, if you internalize this piece of music and remember those words, you can add in the additional syllables with a flick of your pick and make every time through the verse sound a little bit different, like you're going through different verses of the tune. So I'll do that a little bit, but here we go. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and then go back to our full screen. Here we go. And I'll teach you how to do this little bass part. Little taste of the Davy Crockett right there. And so I'm kind of changing things up, adding other little bits of da 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 do 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 do, and you can have some liberty with that based on what you remember of the all the different verses. One thing I want to point out though is in between verses, instead of just going boom boom boom, I'm doing this little alternating bass thing. You don't have to do it through the whole tune, but it's kind of fun to do it in between. And all I'm doing is hitting the bass string and then hitting the other 2 strings, and then putting my finger at the 4th fret on the bass string, and then hitting those other 2 strings, and just doing that over and over again. There you have a little pendulum bass to set the mood.